The desert sun was still soft when Alina Ortiz stepped out of her small adobe home, brushing the sleep from her eyes. Morning in the New Mexico territory was a quiet thing, wind whispering through sage, a few cattle lowing in the distance, and the sound of her own heartbeat filling the lonely, wide-open space. She carried a basket of linens under one arm, ready to begin another long day. Ever since her husband Miguel died 3 winters ago, she'd learned to live with silence, to fill her days with work so she wouldn't hear the echo of her own grief. But that morning she heard something else, footsteps, slow, dragging. Then a voice, hoarse and trembling. "Senora, please, my baby." Alina spun around. At the edge of her yard stood an Apache warrior, tall and exhausted, his long dark hair soaked with sweat, his chest rising and falling in panicked heaves. In his arms was a tiny infant wrapped in a rough deerskin blanket. The baby's cheeks were sunken, his lips were dry, his breathing was weak, a faint flutter of life. The warrior took one step forward, then collapsed to his knees. "I have nothing left," he whispered. "He hasn't eaten in 2 days. His mother, she died in childbirth. I can't feed him. Please, milk, please." For one long moment, Alina stood frozen. She knew how dangerous this could be. An Apache warrior on her land, desperate, weak, holding a dying child. She also knew what fear could make a person do. But then the baby let out the weakest cry she had ever heard. And all fear vanished from her body. "Come inside," she said firmly. "Now." The warrior lifted his head, shock flooding his eyes. He had expected to be shot, cursed, or chased off, but not welcomed. Alina stepped toward him, held out her arms for the child, and the warrior, without hesitation, placed the baby in them. His body trembled not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of helplessness. Inside her home, Alina laid the little one on her bed, gently unwrapping him. He was no more than a month old, his tiny hands balled into fists, his skin burning with fever from dehydration. Alina had no children of her own. Her body had once carried life, but it had slipped away from her before birth. She thought she'd never again hold a baby this small, this fragile. But as she touched his cheek, something deep inside her awakened, an instinct older than fear, older than grief. "Alina," she whispered to herself, as if reminding her own heart who she was, "you can do this." She lifted the baby to her breast. A few long moments passed, and then, miraculously, he latched. His tiny mouth pulled desperately, drinking as if life itself lay in her arms. The Apache warrior watched, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "Mother of mercy," he whispered, "you save him." Alina shook her head softly. "No, I'm only feeding a hungry child. God does the saving." For nearly an hour the baby suckled and rested, his small body finally easing into comfort. The warrior leaned against the wall, too tired to remain upright. His eyes drifted shut, but he forced them open again, unwilling to sleep while a stranger cared for his child. "What's his name?" she asked quietly. "Koa," he whispered. "It means strong, but I don't know if he will survive." "He will," Alina said gently. "He just needed someone." The warrior bowed his head in gratitude. "I am Takoda. My tribe, they scattered after soldiers burned our camp. I ran into the mountains with my child. We have been running for many days." "And your wife?" Alina asked. Her last words were, "Find a mother for him." I failed. His voice broke. "I cannot give milk. I cannot save him." Alina placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You brought him here. That means you did not fail." Takoda swallowed hard, unsure how to accept such mercy. For the rest of the day, the little adobe became a sanctuary. Takoda slept sitting up, too wary to fully rest, while Alina fed Koa again and again, warming his body, rocking him gently, humming old Spanish lullabies that had once filled the halls of her childhood home. By evening, the baby's breathing had strengthened. His color had returned, and his tiny fists opened as he slept peacefully on Alina's chest. Takoda stepped closer, all radiating from him. "He looks different," he said softly, "calmer, alive." "That's what Bobbies do," Alina smiled. "They trust." Takoda hesitated, his voice barely a whisper. "I owe you more than I can pay." "You owe me nothing," she said. "A mother feeds a hungry child, that's all." "You are not his mother," Takoda said gently. Alina looked down at Koa, sleeping so safely, so soundly, and something inside her cracked open like a seed breaking soil. "I'm feeding him," she murmured, "holding him, keeping him alive. For now, that makes me something." Takoda stared at her, then lowered his gaze in deep respect. "You are a mother in spirit, Koa knows." For 3 days Takoda stayed in her home, helping repair the fence, chopping wood, catching fish from the stream. Alina cared for Koa, feeding him every few hours, singing to him, keeping him warm. But on the 4th morning, Takoda stood at her door with the baby in his arms and pain in his eyes. "I must go," he said. "My people, the survivors, they wait for me near the mountains. I can't endanger you further." Alina felt a sudden, sharp ache in her chest. She had known this moment would come, but she was not prepared for how much it hurt. "Take some milk with you," she said, handing him a warm bottle wrapped in cloth. "And take blankets and food." Takoda accepted them with shaking hands. "Alina," he said, voice cracking, "how do I thank you for saving my son?" "You don't," she whispered, "but may I hold him once more before you go?" He placed Koa in her arms. The baby looked up at her with hazel eyes that seemed too wise for such a small child. His tiny hand clung to her finger. "Alina," Takoda said softly. "Yes." "You said a mother feeds a hungry child." He took a deep breath. "Then Koa has 2 mothers now, one who gave him life and one who kept it burning." A tear slid down her cheek. "He'll always have a home here if you ever need one." Takoda nodded. "We will return, I promise. A warrior keeps his word." She watched them walk down the dusty road, disappearing slowly into the horizon. Her arms felt suddenly empty, her home quiet once more. But her heart was no longer hollow. Something had changed. A bond had formed that distance could not break. And 3 months later, when she heard footsteps again, strong, familiar ones, she ran outside with her breath caught in her throat. There stood Takoda, and beside him, wrapped in soft furs, was Koa, bigger, healthier, smiling. Takoda's voice was steady. "We have returned," he said, "not for milk, but because a child needs both his mothers." Alina covered her mouth, tears overflowing. And as Takoda placed Koa back into her arms, the baby reached up and touched her cheek, remembering her smell, her warmth, her heartbeat. She held him close, whispering a promise she never thought she'd speak. "You will never be hungry again, little one, not while I breathe." In that moment, under the wide desert sky, a warrior, a widow, and a tiny child formed a family the world could never have imagined. And Alina Ortiz, once alone and grieving, finally discovered that motherhood was not just something you had to give birth to. It was something you could choose. And she chose it with her whole heart.